Welcome, friends. We're back with another Monday book talk. I am AnnaLee Dragon, the director of the Kinderhook Memorial Library. I opted for a little change of scenery today. We're in our local history quiet reading room, which I miss seeing full of people. So hopefully someday soon that's going to be a reality again. Today we are going to talk about some YA young adult and children's fiction for those of us who may not be young but are young at heart. That is how I feel about myself at this point. And I think this category gets overlooked a lot because adults, there seems to be, just like with audiobooks and we talked about graphic novels, there's kind of a stigma that like adults shouldn't be reading these books because they're infantile or made for children only. And I don't think that that's the case at all. There is some really fantastic, especially in this day and age, children's literature and young adult literature that is coming out that I found just as riveting, just as thought-provoking, just as important, just as literary as many of the adult novels, and maybe more so than some of the adult novels I've read. So I have a bunch here that I have read myself. Some of them have been made into movies or TV shows as well, because they are so timely. A great thing about young adult and children's literature is for those of us who maybe have a shorter attention span, which I don't know about you guys, but one of the COVID pandemic side effects for me has been a difficulty concentrating. And so I am having a hard time getting through adult novels, whereas these, the chapters are short. They are built for people, like there's not a lot of slow moving. They move quickly. They are I think they're built for people with smaller attention spans, like most young adults. And so they work really well for me in the kind of current environment that we're in. And they may be the same for you, I would think. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you a cover of the book, and then I will be back and we will discuss that book, and we will do that through each of them. And then I will put the covers at the very end as well for you, so that if you miss an author or a title name, you'll catch it. And let's just talk some books for us young at heart people, okay? So here's the first book. Okay, so as you saw the cover there, the first book that we're going to discuss is The War That Saved My Life. And it is by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. Apologize my look down. I'm just looking at notes and things. And I have some of the books here. So I'm just reminding myself of what I read that I love so much. So this book starts out in 1939 in England. So it's taking place right before World War II. And there, if for any of you who loved the movie, which I did when I was younger, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, it's a similar period of history kind of point of view. So they had a lot of times taken either orphans or families and shipped them out of London because they were trying to avoid people being injured in any bombings that were happening in the city. And so they shipped them out to the country to live with people who volunteered to take them in. And so this story is about a little girl who has a rough home life. And she and her sibling are sent to live out in the countryside with somebody. And she is dreading this, like many kids would. It was scary, period, but also, she was with somebody she didn't know. But the beautiful part is that her home life was not great. And so this offered a lot of opportunities. And that's what it ends up being, is a blessing in disguise, which is why the title, The War That Changed My Life, the character that she ends up staying with has a hard time at first with her, but really develops a rapport. And it has a lot of big feelings in it. It's about a period in history. I know a lot of you like to read adult fiction about the world wars. And so I think that it will strike a lot of similar notes for you. And there is something about it being told from the point of view of a child and what that must have been like that is really eye-opening and heartfelt and interesting. So if you haven't seen The War That Saved My Life, I would suggest picking it up. It's not a super long book, but it's so well written and just, I don't know, somebody on the back cover says that another author says it's a moving story with an authentic voice beautifully told. So that's timeless and ageless, right? It doesn't matter how old you are. There was also a sequel to this book. So if you read this and love this, there is a second one that you could follow up with. Okay, so let's get on to our next book. All right, so the next book, The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill, is a little more magical, which, as anybody who watches my talks knows, that's one of the things that I really enjoy. I know not everybody is into fantasy elements, but if you are, this book might be for you. So this is about a village where they make a sacrifice every year. They take a baby and they leave it in the woods for the quote unquote evil witch to kind of satiate her and keep her happy. But it turns out that the witch in the forest, Zan, is actually a really nice lady, and she is a witch, but what she does then is she takes the babies that they leave and she brings them to the other side of the forest to another village and gives them to families there to raise. And so nothing bad is happening to the babies. She's actually saving them. But this one time she gets a baby that she's bringing back, and in the couple days before she can give it to the other village, she usually feeds them Starlight, but this time she mistakenly feeds the baby Moonlight, and that imbues her with some magic, which then means that Zan doesn't feel like she can give her to a regular family because there's this magical element introduced. And so it's all about Zan and this baby, and the baby is obviously the girl who drank the moon. And it's just a beautiful story, a lot of magic, a lot of, if you like fairy tales, that sort of stuff. This is in that kind of vein. And I loved it. It did win a Newbery, which is a huge award in children's literature. And the New York Times Book Review called it impossible to put down. So right now, if we could use a little more fantasy and a little less reality, this might be right up your alley. All right, on to our next. Okay, so we're back in the World War II era again with The Book Thief, which is a fantastic story about a little girl who is, when her parents can't take care of her anymore, she is adopted by a German couple. Her name is Liesel. And she's illiterate when she arrives in their house, but the adoptive father really encourages her to start reading. And then that couple also takes in a Jew that's hiding from Hitler's army, and Liesel becomes friends with him. And so it's the story of the war from, again, a child's point of view, but also very much about books and literature and the worlds that opens up for us. It was made into a movie, which I happen to have here. So you may have seen the movie version. It's got some fantastic people in it, but I, again, love the book better. So if you haven't read The Book Thief and you're one of the people who loves the World War II fiction that we have, and I see a lot of you, this is another choice that might be something that would interest you. And it's just from a slightly different point of view, but it's still poignant and heart-wrenching in some parts, but really overall like a hope-giving kind of story. And about the transformative power of literature, which is what, drew me to librarianship, what draws many people to books, is the ability to live 1,000 lives in one lifetime, right? So The Book Thief is excellent, and I highly recommend it. Okay, our next one is coming up. Okay, so we're changing tone a little and we're moving into some young adult fiction. So it's aimed at a slightly older age than the ones we had just been talking about. So the first one was made into a movie on Netflix that I know it was on Netflix at one point anyway, with Jennifer Aniston. It's called Dumplin, as you saw on the cover there. The subtitle is Go Big or Go Home, and it's by Julie Murphy. And it is about a girl, Willow Dean Dixon, who her mama calls Dumplin. Her mom is a former beauty queen, and she's gorgeous and all of the things that Willow Dean does not think she is. She is not a skinny girl. She is not the type for beauty pageants. She meets a boy who's really good looking and interested in her. She's in high school, and she kind of, instead of that giving her more confidence, it actually makes her second guess herself more. And so she decides, in an effort to become more comfortable in her own skin, that she's going to do the thing that scares her the most, which is to be in a beauty pageant. And it's the story of her. It is funny, like laugh out loud funny. The characters are so real. It's got some great messages, especially for young adults, about body confidence and body positivity. But I would argue that many adults could use the same. I know I could. So I don't know. It was just a really laugh out loud, realistic, heartbreaking, joyful, all of the things. It has characters that you're just cheering for. And I did actually really enjoy the movie version of this one. So once you read the book, I would read the book first. The reason I say that is because I often think that if I watch the movie first, then when I read the book, I am just picturing the movie in my head. I much prefer to read the book first so I get to imagine what the characters look like in my own mind. And then when I watch the movie, if they don't match up, at least I had my own moment with it and I got to decide what these people looked like and how they were before the movie either makes it awesome or ruins it. So anyway, I highly recommend Dumplin, and check out the movie too, because it's really a feel-good kind of story and I loved it. Okay, we've got 2 more to talk about. Okay, so this next book is an example of YA fiction targeting a really heavy subject and doing it beautifully. So it's also very timely, I think, given everything that we're dealing with in our country and the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the different prejudices and things that have bubbled to the surface. The book, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, which was made into a film, which was awesome. But it's all about 16-year-old Star Carter, who kind of has two different worlds. She lives in a poor neighborhood and she goes to a fancy prep school. And so it's two very different kind of atmospheres, and she's trying always to modify behavior and looks to blend so as to not draw too much attention to herself. But then something really terrible happens and she witnesses the fatal shooting of one of her closest friends at the hands of a police officer. And he was unarmed. And then this is the story. She has a relative who's a police officer too. So there is this like positive experience she has with the police. And then there's this experience that happened with her friend. And she's trying to kind of make sense of the whole thing and do what's right and stand up for those who need to be stood up for. It's just a really great story about the ideas of race relations, police brutality. It really humanizes it in a way by telling an individual story. And I just think it was a fantastic book. It got rave reviews from a lot of other young adult authors. I don't feel like it got the attention it should have from adults, though, like adult authors. And it's just so fantastic. So it's timely and hard-hitting and big subjects, but really, really well done. And it might give you a different viewpoint on things because you're looking at the world in this book through the eyes of a character who probably is nothing like you, a young African-American girl living in the city and experiencing these things. I think that's the beauty of fiction, is the empathy it allows you and the ability to put on somebody else's life and try it on for size and really see how those things feel, because the author gets the chance to describe their internal monologues. So I loved The Hate You Give, and if you haven't checked it out, definitely try it out. It's an excellent book. Okay, last book. Okay, so for our final book, I wanted to do one that is the beginning of a trilogy. It was a debut novel. So again, if you watch these talks, you know I love a debut novel. This one is called The Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I probably mispronounced that. I apologize. Adeyemi. And so this is about a fictional place called Orisha. And it is about a character named Zeli, who remembers when there was magic everywhere. And then a bad king took over and banished the practice of magic and killed people, and especially anyone that had these magical powers. So there is definitely a heavy fantasy element in these. And so now that this girl has a chance to bring back magic and strike against the monarchy with the help of a rogue princess, and she has to outwit and outrun the crown prince, who's hell-bent on eradicating magic for good. So there's a real girl power, grassroots movement kind of feeling to this. They say, you know, some of the reviews on here, the New York Times bestselling authors are saying things like it's magnificent, heart-rending, earth-shaking, a fantasy world rich in history and power struggles. Children of Blood and Bone is the epic I've been waiting for. I read this one. I have not gotten to read any of the others in the trilogy yet, but I'm dying to, because it is just so full of detail. It's very, like I've mentioned, I love Tolkien. This is very world building. There's lots going on here, different types of people, different races, different histories happening. And so it has its own life, really, this book. And so when you open it up, you really truly feel like you're stepping into another world, and all of these things are laid out in front of you. So it's, I don't know, it's great for the imagination, deals with some timely and topical subjects. Again, unlike Tolkien, which can be long-winded and a little slower in parts, this doesn't really have that. It's moving right from the beginning. So if you're looking for something fun to pick up and you are into some amount of fantasy, you might really enjoy The Children of Blood and Bone, which is the first in a trilogy. So if you love it, then there are others coming. I think they're actually already in print, several of them. So it's very exciting. All right, so that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I am happy to be done unboxing for a bit and exploring some new categories. So we're definitely going to talk women's history coming up, because March is Women's History Month. So that will be coming. And in the meantime, if there is anything we can do for you, if you want an appointment or you need books, we can help you select. We can put out for curbside. We've got crafts to take home, lots going on, a new newsletter coming soon. So spring is on the way, folks. Let's all get excited for that. I look forward to seeing you all soon, and thank you so much, and I will talk to you later. Bye.